Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Security for ISV series. We're very thrilled to kick off our very first session, Security Fundamentals for ISVs. So this series is tailored specifically for you, independent software vendors, ISVs, diving deep into the unique challenges and opportunities in securing your applications. Today, we'll cover essential strategies from building a strong cloud security baseline to adopting the zero trust model and also not to mention security first culture. This series is also a place for us to ask any questions you may have around ISV and security. And there will be a section where we cover Q&A as well. So before we dive into the agenda, let's cover some logistics. So this event offers live captions in multiple languages. So here's how to enable them. So go to language and speech in your team settings, select show live captions, and choose your preferred language. For the best experience, of course, try download the Teams desktop client. As I said earlier, we will also have a Q&A session at the end to address any questions you may have. And also in the meantime, ask away any questions you have by using the Q&A button. All right, so just want to introduce the presenters. Of course, myself, my name is Vic Padana. I'm an ISV Partner Solution Architect based in Melbourne, Australia. My day-to-day focuses on partners building scalable SaaS applications to unlock growth using cloud technologies. I am passionate about cloud native development, open source, AI, and of course, security. Joining me is Dean Corcoran, Senior Partner Solution Architect based in Sydney. Dean, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you, Vic. It's talk about such an important subject. I'm Dean Corcoran, senior technologist here at Microsoft, and I work as part of the Asia hosting team. So I work with organizations who wish to transform their businesses into AI-driven and business value organizations from traditional on-premises type organizations. So it's really good to be here with a background going back to specifically security. It's very interesting that today security is everyone's role. It's not necessarily just a specific security team's role. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm looking forward to sharing some of our points of view with you today. We also have Jumu, who unfortunately won't be here live with us at this very moment, but will be here in the background and has been instrumental in pulling together pretty much all of the content. Is that right, Vic?
Yes, definitely,
Yeah,
majority of the content. And he will be appearing as well in the Q&A, hopefully. So we'll see how we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate it. So we'll cover the agenda for today. So we'll cover three essential topics to set the foundation for securing ISV applications. So number one is state of cybersecurity. So we'll kick things off with an analysis of the current state of cybersecurity to give you an overview of where we'll unpack kind of the pressing threats and explore the landscape. We also cover why we're here, why security, why ISVs. So we'll dissect the unique security challenges that ISVs face in today's world, AI world, interconnected world, and understand the importance of proactive security measures. And then finally, what we're waiting for is security fundamentals. So this section contains actionable strategies that really establish that strong security posture. So this segment is designed to arm you with the foundational knowledge, best practices, as well as insights that help you fortify your applications against cyber threats. So let's dive in. So we have to give you an idea the cyber threats that have grown 5x quite recently. So the cybersecurity landscape is really an evolving pace. So it's growing at unprecedented pace, and the numbers tell a really concerning story. So first state of fact here. So we have 340 million cyber criminal and nation state attacks happen every day. Password attacks have surged from 4,000 per second in 2023 to in 2024, 7,000 per second, really showcasing the sheer scale of the problem. Microsoft now tracks over 1,500 threat actors a significant leap from 300 in 2023, and really reflecting the growing sophistication of adversaries. And then we'll deep dive into this and why AI and really where ISVs is critically placed to adapt and stay ahead of these challenges. So adversaries are leveraging Gen AI. So obviously we heard of ChatGPT. We know that everyone is talking about it, and it's still continuing to be the trend. As they say, AI can be used for good things, but it can also be used for not so good things or bad things. So it's becoming a bit of a double-edged sword. So it drives innovation, but adversaries are using them to amplify the attacks as well, in many ways. So, for example, malware generation, right? So, crafting more dynamic and undetectable malicious software. Automated vulnerability discovery, being able to target system weaknesses, customizing exploits, phishing and social engineering, disguising malicious code, hiding harmful scripts to bypass detection mechanisms, and of course, not to mention deepfakes, generating that convincing fake data, emails, or even voices for fraud. So for ISV, these evolving threats really underline the importance of embedding security by design into our application, into every application. So let's cover a little bit about the surface attacks that we expect adversaries will also target now. So the attack services that we typically cover or traditionally cover application, cloud, and network vulnerabilities. So it's obviously remain critical areas of concerns. Identity, data protection, endpoints, and so on. They're very important. But nowadays, with Gen AI, there's new attack services appearing, right, emerging. So with Gen AI, adversaries are exploiting these areas, creating a layered challenge for ISVs, and really that facing or developers are facing very challenging problems. So, for example, Gen AI, prompts and going back to this, Gen AI prompts and responses, manipulating inputs and outputs, AI data and orchestration, plugins and functions, RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and web data, so injecting that malicious or misleading information, and then AI models, the foundational models. So being able to target model weights and architecture, the clamps, if you will, to disrupt the functionality of the very model by introducing backdoors. So as ISVs, we understand that these dual layered attack is really key, for us to be able to understand the different threats that are there so that we can build a resilient, secure solutions. So why ISVs? So cybersecurity has become a really paramount concern for businesses of all sizes and industries. And then ISVs are pretty much at the heart of that, right? So really play a crucial role in protecting data. As you know, ISVs are providing software for a lot of these businesses by being able to consume them. And the scale of the challenge is really big, right? So enormous, with global losses from cybercrime projected to reach outstanding 9.2 trillion in 2024. So ISV are pretty much central to digital defense strategies. And by 2028, there's some stats as well. It is anticipated that organizations will invest up to 1.1 trillion in cybersecurity solutions. And this investment highlights, the critical role that ISVs can play in providing those cutting-edge technologies and solutions to help businesses to defend themselves. Beyond defense, ISVs are also instrumental in building trust across the digital economy, right? So, and that's really important that, being able to ensure that businesses can operate securely, facilitating safe transactions and communications that are backbone of modern commerce. And last but not least, ISVs are at the forefront of AI transformation. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into business operations, it's very important security first approach to be taken as a first priority. So ISVs are leading the charge here, all right? So embedding those security into AI solutions, as many of us know, ISVs are building AI into their solutions. But at the same time, we need to highlight, underscore the security aspects of things to be able to protect us from vulnerabilities and threats. I have to say, if I have to add to reflect on this, is wisdom of Sun Tzu. If you know the Chinese philosopher, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. So ISVs are pretty much uniquely positioned to understand both the threats they face and also the tools at their disposal. So that's why we believe that ISVs and the series that we actually have today are very, very important for us to continue educating ourselves and improving our security best practices and knowledge. Right, so moving on, security challenges faced by ISVs. Speaking of challenges, so there's many of them, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of from here. So there's at least four, as we can see here. So one major issue is the lack of dedicated security teams within many ISVs. So that's number one. Sometimes we don't have resources. Number two is that the pressure to deliver rapid releases is also another significant challenge, especially as we are at the cutting edge. There's a constant demand for new features and updates. So there's going to be like a trade-off, right? So there will be a trade-off that increases the risk of introducing vulnerabilities into the software. There's a trade-off with innovation and security. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about SFI, Secure Future Initiative, that Dean will cover later on, and how we see those trade-offs. Number three is around regular updates, managing that supply chain. So important. So a lot of ISVs are leveraging third-party components. So keeping those components updated is really important. And then, last but not least, security again is frequently sidelined in favor of adding new features. And this could be economic reason, it could be, market pressure reasons. But it's important that by focusing just on one area, which is like speed and functionality, can also increase risks for both the ISV and our customers. So addressing these challenges really, requires that strategic approach. So security is a defining challenge for ISVs. As you can see here, these are some of the threats that we saw. Some recent headlines. One incident, hackers accessed nearly 7 million people's data by exploiting simple security oversights. This sensitive information then being sold on forums and so on in the dark markets. And then another alarming case involved a coordinated attack on tech companies. That this basically affect our day-to-day in hospitals, universities. So malicious software was installed and due to supply chain security issues. And then this one is probably one of the biggest ransomware attack, led hackers to demand a $70 million of ransom, affecting thousands and thousands of businesses worldwide. So this is a real challenges that we're facing as ISVs play a bigger role in protecting these businesses. So let's have a look at how attackers think. As you can see here, so I'm going to play a few animations here. So number one is that attackers really think in graphs. So they meticulously mapping out their strategies to exploit vulnerabilities. So for example, there's a phishing email, enticing users to open an attachment and then click on malicious links. And then this simple action can lead to exploitation and installation of harmful software. And then second as well, attackers might use brute force or stolen credentials to gain access to accounts. This then allows them to conduct some discovery, reconnaissance, if you will, gathering configuration data and compromising user accounts. And then after that, once user accounts compromised, attacker can then perform some destructive actions, like for example, exfiltrate sensitive data. Can also do, for example, stopping services and performing holding the organization hostage and so on, like the previous example that we showed earlier. And then defenders, on the other hand, think in layers. So implementing those multiple levels of security to prevent, or hopefully prevent those complex attacks. So that's, again, it's important for you to know what you're dealing with, to know the enemy and know yourself, and you really then understand how best you can defend yourself. And it all pretty much starts with setting the solid foundations of security first and foremost. And this is a really good segue for me to introduce my colleague Dean, who will go through the fundamentals, or ISV security fundamentals. Go ahead, Dean.
So thank you very much, Vic. Look, you've made a very good point of showing the importance of ISV securing their businesses and securing their customers. A lot of organisations out there like yourselves are trusted by your customers to do a heck of a lot for them, and represent a lot of industries that are quite often targeted by those wishing to sort of seek advantage in some way or another. So look, as we look over the sort of principles that you should really start to think about when it comes to securing your operations, securing your business, securing your technology against cyber threats. We've got 6 sort of high-level principles that you can follow in order to start to get everything in order, so that you can start to speed ahead with doing what you want to set out to do, and that is to achieve the mission that you're using technology for today. So whatever that might be, maybe it's helping your customers with payments, or helping them with summarize things, or some sort of NFP, who knows, sell products or otherwise. So you want to be able to do that as your core, but security is a foundational thing today, and it's more expensive than just ensuring that you are protected against certain types of attacks. So let's have a bit of a look at the top level. From we look at governance, moving right through to everything such as zero trust, protecting credentials, and of course passwords and sign-ins, and of course the human element as well, being the actual culture of the organization starting to embody security and as a foundation to just everyday activities, so that you can respond much quicker and you have a much more hardened and solid foundation that is much harder for people to compromise in the first instance. So looking at governance, covers the processes and the responses that you have in place for understanding your, in this case, your security profile or vulnerability profile and possible threats that may exist for your organization. Having good governance is a foundational foundational element of any security implementation. Sure, you can go through and make sure you've got stronger password strength, or make sure all the data is encrypted, or use certain technology strategies to ensure that it's harder for a compromise to take place. But inevitably, if a compromise does take place, what do people do? What's the list of things that people are going to follow in order to remediate the situation and get back to business as quickly as possible? Or in some cases, even notify the relevant authorities of the case of having a breach or some sort of a compromise. Because, even if you don't know what your obligations are around the compromising of personally identifiable information, or some sort of a financial or fraud case that may unfortunately affect your organization, that is one of the first stages in establishing your governance, is to understand some of that. So it's going to cover the people who are building the systems, so the people who are developing. It's going to cover the operations surrounding that. What are the cycles that you use within any of your pipelines or any of your update tooling? And then also have as part of that governance, the outward members of the team and of course stakeholders from management and potentially even a customer point of view within the governance as well. As we move through cloud governance, one of the first points is to build that governance team. And the governance team will be expected to look at the assessing the risks to your organization, which vectors, which different what different parts of your organization broadly, or the solution that you've built, are vulnerable or have certain known possible vulnerabilities or risks associated with them. The risks could actually be a technology-based risk, or it could be just the very profile of the type of business that you're conducting and the behaviors or market that it's exposed to are all elements of a risk. We're not going to go into heaps of detail here today, other than to sort of highlight the high level view. This is all part of the Cloud Adoption Framework govern method, and so you can get a lot of that information from the relevant documentation on Cloud Adoption Framework. Of course, you want to document your cloud governance policies so that everyone knows where to go around the way to govern cloud in the first instance, the way that you are running your processes in the first place from a governance point of view, and how you're going to enforce those governance policies. That the enforcement's going to be a technological based enforcement where you don't sort of have a choice but to go follow the governance model, or are they going to be sort of cultural or documentation or process based elements where people must follow the relevant correct process, because it isn't something that can be wrapped up in a safety net of sort of a hard-coded, figuratively speaking, approach. And then last but not least is, how are you ensuring that governance is being adhered to consistently, and where there's been violations, you've followed the relevant procedures. And so you need to have good monitoring process for those governance procedures in there. So that, looking at this and that's just that extra level of detail, starting at building your governance team, include all different members from different parts of the organization. It's not just the developers, it's not just security people. You need to have stakeholders, you need to have people that understand the industry that you're appealing to or the market that you're appealing to, in order to get a full vision of the different aspects that need to go into the full governance model, especially from a security point of view. When you're looking at your risks, as mentioned before, understanding your obligations around regulatory compliance, security operations, maybe even the use of certain pieces of technology such as AI, attracting attention from regulators around the world. So know your industry. If you're in healthcare, there'll be specific healthcare regulations. If you're in finance, there'll be, of course, financial type information that no doubt will have regulations in the way that you need to behave, that you need to be aware of. And so this is all part of a good governance model, even outside the scope of securing your infrastructure and securing your business and cyber threats, but it's all part of good running practice. Define the policies against those cloud risks, and how, and again, how are you going to enforce them, as we went down into detail on before, and monitoring them, and exactly what monitoring systems you can put in place, whether they be automatic, whether they be human-based auditing systems or otherwise, for ensuring that you're keeping up with your cloud governance. So when it comes to AI, look, AI is a bit of a multi-tool in many ways, and so we can use AI to look at our threat policy. And in this instance, yes, even Microsoft makes a solution that gives you the ability to look at the usage patterns of your applications and services in your architecture, the authentication events, end user behaviors, both on an administrative level and in a day-to-day running level, and then to sort of determine some of that risk. AI itself also brings in some other sort of risk profile as well to be considerate of. When you're looking at regulations, as mentioned just a moment ago, there will be specific industry regulations that you have to comply with in order to just run the model that you run within your particular service. And so again, health, government, codes of conduct, some of these regulations and standards may be more standards or sort of a code of practice as opposed to actual law or enforceable regulations. But you will have to be considerate of different jurisdictions if you're a multinational ISV where you're working across multiple jurisdictions or multiple geographies, where there's different consideration around how to implement your particular industry solution. Of course, when it comes to AI being a more of the tool that you're using, we're starting to see regulation appear around that. So understanding even the use of certain types of keys technologies within your solution is going to be important for how you may be able to run business. And so that needs to be part of your governance model. So part of any implementation, any sort of good standards of practice, to be fair, is to set up a baseline. What is the minimum baseline that you stand up as far as delivering any system for any customer for that matter? Security is no exception. And so by setting up a cloud security baseline, it gives you that standard that you are going to maintain at the lowest possible level. And so it's that foundation that you can be assured that you're going to say, look, when we're deploying new features into production, you're going to maintain, say, a certain level of encryption, or a certain level of credential management, or a certain level of behavior, maybe for very sensitive areas of your solution, that must be mandated as far as the way that you deliver and continue to manage and maintain that solution. And so setting a cloud security baseline is an important first step within your governance framework broadly. And so that way you can, as part of that baseline, even set up some of the initial telemetry and the initial systems for protecting your data and understanding how, or making it much easier for you to comply with certain regulations because you set a certain standard from the get-go, and then looking at things from the perspective of understanding from that more comprehensive baseline what different risk profile and possible breaches you would be faced with. In a security baseline, it needs to be fairly comprehensive as far as providing a platform for you to be successful. And so the security baseline needs to have that asset inventory in there that understands or has that register of the different services that you are running within your architecture, within your solution. A risk assessment associated with those assets, how they're going to be accessed, by who, when they're going to be accessed, what level of control or what level of capability that access actually grants, the different roles, if you will. How you're going to be managing patch cycles and downtime. And of course, how you're going to be monitoring for any skew or variation from the standards that you set up within that baseline. So when a new instance or when a new feature gets deployed, how that monitoring is going to check whether or not there's some sort of a variation from that baseline that you've standardized on. The baseline in many respects is a fairly sort of a layered approach if you're thinking about typical technology, sort of that layer cake, I suppose, where you look at the infrastructure at your bottom and your high level platform services and actual IP that you build every day are involved. And so you need to take a holistic approach right from the infrastructure you're sitting on. Now, when you're working in a cloud like Microsoft Azure, of course, there's certain levels of implied compliance and standard through that shared responsibility model that you inherit as part of running your services in Azure. And so no doubt there's a certain level of compliance below the line of infrastructure where you're passing off some of that, that security baseline to Microsoft's configuration. So you can inherit then Microsoft's governance model for that. But wherever you create a configuration change or deploy new services and configure those services, then you start to inherit that new cloud security baseline above that. And so that needs to be detailed for every individual service, back to that asset register we mentioned previously. Some of the good principles to think about when we talk about tenancy in cloud terms, we're referring to that separate identity environment and that separate high-level division of the way that we partition services within Azure. And so it's possible to use a tenancy configuration or different tenancy arrangements where you may have a combination of different multiple tenancies or a single tenancy to pass off some of that shared responsibility when you've got multiple customers from different organizations all accessing your services at the same time. Now, this is going to be fairly well determined on the architecture you've settled on for your given solution, or from a security point of view, maybe it makes you think about a different way of configuring your architecture across tenancy or within tenancy. And so generally on one side, where we have different tenancies for different environments, of course, you're going to increase the level of isolation by including a different tenancy for every given customer, or every given geo, or every given sort of way that you could slice and dice your business. That, of course, increases a degree of complexity that you'll need to consider as far as the way that you actually just manage your ongoing operations. But of course, that you'll want to make sure that your standard baselines and governance framework are able to handle that well. Of course, you can have a fully shared tenancy. That makes things a lot easier, generally, as far as the way that you manage that sort of atomic structure of services for your solution. But that, of course, means that you need to think about the potential for customer isolation. So if one customer is not using your services in a very safe way, is there a chance that you're going to have some sort of a flow-on effect to other customers from different organizations? So looking at the different tenancy considerations, again, some of these I've mentioned implicitly before. You're going to have shared resources in a single tenancy. In a single tenancy, you can have that noisy neighbor situation where the neighbors who are doing unsafe things need to be, you will have to think about how you're going to isolate those from other customers. The scale and performance considerations may be different. Of course, there's the capacity and cost consideration that comes into the different tenancy considerations. Security, tenancies by their very nature are a security boundary. And so having multiple tenancies potentially does increase security, but also decreases accessibility and increases complexity. And the economics of it as well. So economics of multiple tenancies may not be good for your particular business model, depending on how you want to manage it. That may go either way. Maybe the cost of securing in a single tenancy may actually increase the costs in a single tenancy when you start to look at not so much the Azure bill, so to speak, but look at the security profile posture that you need to now govern for. And so in that instance, maybe multiple tenancies may play an impact on going the other direction. Tenancy could be used in a more fluid way as well. You may have your own definition of tenancy within your way of running your organization. And so just sort of noting that. But generally speaking, we're thinking of things as being petitioned. And so looking at in a Microsoft Azure tenancy sense, if you are looking at a single tenancy, then you have to start to think about how you're petitioning the data, how you're petitioning the performance, the behaviors that may be impacted by a security-related event that then flow on to other customers or the overall running of your services. And so thinking about these from a cost, thinking of them from a technology point of view and how you're going to start. Naturally, after all this, do a heck of a lot of testing, do some teaming, red teaming, blue teaming, do some chaos engineering, get in there using automation, using humans, get a bit of AI in there to, see if you can access, especially in the multi-tenancy configuration, see if you can access data in one customer's tenant from another customer's identity. Try some interesting things, in particular if you're using AI, generative AI, you've got less deterministic outputs. And so if you're cross-pollinating that in your architecture, that's something to be very considerate of and ensure that that's quite a robust mechanism. And generally probably not the best approach unless it's a very, very safe use case. And so look at the responsible AI guidance on how to handle some of that. Yeah, testing, test. Get people into test that didn't build it, get people who maybe even aren't techie people to do the testing because you need this to be a resilient solution where when Bob signs in, you don't want to see Mary's details exposed. Zero trust. So this is a core principle that of security today. Once upon a time, having a security background myself, it was all about setting up a strong perimeter, setting up a strong wall around your organization and deciding what gets in and what gets out. The problem with that is when something gets in, it's sort of free to do it at once. And so we need to be much more granular with that approach. And so today, when it comes to our trust principles, we really need to be assuming that we shouldn't be trusting anything for anything that shouldn't be there right now doing that particular thing. And so we need to be at very fine levels of detail, be verifying high risk activities within your solution and determining whether or not they're being performed by the right person at the right time, doing the right thing. And so ensuring that at all moments, whether it be the end users, whether it be your administrators, are able to determine whether or not they are permitted to do that particular function or access those particular details. Always be using principal least privilege. It's been around for a while. In other words, only give the amount of access that's required for the task, this very, very specific task, for the period of time that the task is expected to take. And assume breach at any given time. Look, it's very common for there to be a breach. The first thing that any attacker wants to do if they breach a system is to be invisible for as long as possible to reap the most personal benefit for whatever outcome they're trying to drive. And in some cases, that could, that outcome may be to sit there just harvesting information forever. If anyone is sort of familiar with any sort of counterintelligence type of operation at this sort of macro or at a macro or a micro scale, being invisible but still being on the inside is a very, very powerful thing to do. So always be assuming breach, always look for anomalous behaviors, users accessing things they shouldn't be accessing at the wrong time, or key events that may play into each other. So this has to be done. Zero trust doesn't just apply to people. It applies to the data, the apps, the infrastructure, the network, the services, and the identities. So quite often the people you think of as the identities. And so when you're looking at a Microsoft Zero Trust architecture, we break these things out. From an identity point of view, make sure you're implementing industry standard multi-factor authentication. Generally speaking, Microsoft has raised the bar whenever you're using Microsoft authentication technologies. We really are pushing that you can't get in by any other way other than multi-factor authentication. Sometimes the actor just wants to get access to your service to use the compute, and so they're going to look for any credentials they can get, not to hurt you directly, but maybe to use your bill implicitly to access that compute. So check, different users should be accessing high risk services or permitting or got access, I should say, to high risk activities such as provisioning services. All user applications, make sure you use multi-factor authentication. Try to use, where possible, not just multi-factor, but phishing prevention technologies, or technologies that help to reduce the chance that someone who knows a password or can phish for a password is able to access a service, or even in the time and place. Multi-factor isn't all 100% a way of protecting against that. Make sure access and control policies are in place and people only have access to do what they need to do for the time they're doing it. Moving on to devices. So devices may be at an operating system level. It may be at an end user device level. So is the device that's being used the right device? Has it been authenticated? For those who are running apps on downstream devices like iPhones, Android devices, or otherwise, or Windows or Mac devices, is the particular operation, is it running within the secure environment? Is it running in a compromised environment? Has it been the device been rooted or something like that? Is there security software running on the device, looking for different behaviors as well on the device? Data, this is a bit of a passion area of mine. Look, data needs to be classified today. In the era of AI, it is all about data. And so you need to understand more of the type of data that you're working on, whether it be personal customer data or your own business data or financial data or health data or other types of sensitive data, and apply best practice encryption and real-time protection to understand the nature of whether or not that data is being accessed the right way at the right time, just with users. Applications need to have policy enforcement around the way that they're run. Make sure that they are also an extra data layer as well, that they're only accessing the right data at the right time and they have their own data handling characteristics. For example, something like financial information, displaying credit cards. Maybe the credit card information should not be displayed in an app ever, for instance. And so the right type of data profiling at the data layer within the database right up to the application layer can provide a lot of different remediation from certain types of attacks to help reduce that surface area. In multi-cloud environments as well, are you using different vendors' clouds for scale or price or some other feature benefits? How are those apps behaving, and where are they getting accessed from? Is there an interesting pattern of usage for those apps that may be determining some sort of a compromise is in place? Of course, infrastructure as well. We see a number of attacks where people don't really care so much for the work you're doing, but just want access to your infrastructure to go and provide their own ability to use your cloud services for their malicious activity, such as crypto mining or otherwise. And so be sure that your infrastructure, even at the base level, is secured from even your people, because your people might be the weakest link, which is why you need to look at this from both a cultural aspect right through from the people, the process, and the tools. And of course, network as well. Where are people accessing from? Do you have real-time, good old-fashioned threat protection and network edge capabilities deployed? Are you using encryption for all types of communication? Is there authentication for the network? And at the highest level, we have that organization policy you need to adhere to. The good thing is, once you've got everything connected and you have telemetry running across all services, that it means that you can start to get a complete profile of when an identity is accessing from a certain device, from a certain location, accessing a certain type of data, using a certain compute platform and app, accessing a certain type of infrastructure. That develops a sort of profile that can start to provide a behavior analysis that a lot of the threat intelligence tools that, say, Microsoft and other organizations provide are able to start to look at the patterns that may indicate that you are at risk. For more information, have a look at the Zero Trust link we see on the screen. And moving on a little. So credentials, not going to go through all the different types of credentials, passwords. Are we using passwords today? The most frequent type of attack and successful compromise we see today still is quite often weak credential management. So move away where possible from the good old persistent credentials that, the good old keys and secrets that you may have had at the past, where everyone knows the admin password. Looks very, very old-fashioned, I suppose. Get with the now, and start to use modern encryption technologies, modern credential handling technologies that ideally even take the handling of credentials away from the people. And so there's a fair bit in this, and definitely not time for us to go into detail. But make no mistake, the majority of compromises we see today are still coming via weak credential management behaviors. So definitely use secure secret management solutions where possible. Rotate where you do have credentials that need to be fixed, because there are some situations where you don't really have a lot of choice. Certain services, for instance, rotate those credentials, make them have that should be part of your governance policy, your procedures. Limit who has access to only those who absolutely need it. Ensure that they have the training around them as well, and ensure credentials themselves are also in turn encrypted and protected. Just general good practices. Look, there's a lot of tools that are available just within Azure natively, and good practice, everything from just good old using your standard environment variables that are very transient in their usage, and so therefore you can't power cycle and have them persist, those types of things. But of course, tools like Azure Key Vault, managed identities, and even in the app configuration themselves has ability for you to further enhance the security of credentials. Look, security itself is, it's a full process. And any process needs to be an ongoing and constantly evaluated thing. So look, from a security point of view, we're constantly seeing new threats. These days, we're seeing more and more AI originating and AI targeting threats. And so that's not to say if you're not using AI, you're not vulnerable to them, because they're going to use AI as the way of trying to compromise you. So keep monitoring and evaluating what your posture is, what the threat landscape looks like. Get savvy to the ingenious and inventive ways that attackers are utilizing to try and compromise organization. Keep updating constantly, keep your training up to date, and stay compliant with regulations. They are going to skew as technology changes, as new tools come along, as new threats get discovered. We're going to see changes in regulations, and some of those regulations may come with potential costs to the way that you run your business, both from a risk point of view and from a non-adherence point of view. Look, there's a lot of different weak points that you'll see today. I'd say every organisation has a weak point somewhere that may seem embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's great that you discover it in the first place. Get out there, do some assessment, and understand good security practice and make it part of your culture. That security is just a way of being. I once remember a quote from a Formula One driver. I think it was Mario Andretti. I think he said it's something along the lines of, "It's amazing how many Formula One drivers don't understand that the brakes are not for slowing down." So good security can be seen as a way of slowing down an organization, but the right security application is actually a way of speeding you up. So having good security practice, good security behaviors in your organization means you can do more of what you want to do by having that foundation in place. That Formula One track, if you like, that is your foundation you should be targeting. And the Formula One track should be good security principles. And at Microsoft, we have the Secure Future initiative, where everything should be secure by design. So as we're building new products and services, we think about security as part of the process. When they're turned on, they're secure by default. And so therefore, good practice, it's not open. Remember the good old default password, the days of what's the default password for this? That's not a secure password if everyone knows it, right? And so that's probably the biggest sort of stereotype of the industry or trope of the industry. And then generally our operations need to be secure as well. And look, feel free to steal. It's the best way. Here, steal our Secure Future initiative principles for your organization as well. And it's very holistic across identities, tenants, and the networks, how people operate their engineers and systems that they use, the DevOps, DevSecOps, etc., FinOps, all included as part of the process. Should be security amongst everything. How you're monitoring and how you then use it as a platform for innovation. A lot of resources there. We've covered a heck of a lot in a small amount of time, and probably watching the time now, we're probably going over. So I'll pass over to Vic to finish up.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dean, for those insights on the ISV security fundamentals. Love the quote from F1 driver: "Security can accelerate your progress rather than impede." So as we wrap up, so we encourage you to take the next steps in strengthening your security posture. So as you see the resources on your screen now, explore them to continue your journey. So we have a number of resources. So WAF security assessment, assess your application security readiness at MS WAF security. We have cloud adoption framework. As you can see, we covered that around governance and so on. We have zero trust. Learn how to implement zero trust principles in your organization. Adopt security, so you can get started with and explore different security products that we have. Go to aka.ms, try security. And then finally, we have SaaS workload guidance that just recently released. So that was released about 3 weeks back. So we explore best practices for securing your SaaS applications as well, and also other considerations. Finally, we also value your feedback. So please take a moment to share your thoughts and help us improve future sessions by filling out the positive and feedback form. All right, so with that, I'm just going to highlight that security is a team sport. We're all in this together, and hopefully we have shared everything that hopefully give you the foundations for you to be able to continue your journey improving security posture for the benefit of all, for all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Vic. Take care.
Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for attending the session. So really appreciate your time, your investment, spending the time with us. I can't really see any questions posted in the chat, so we're gonna have a few minutes. So I guess I want to start off asking our presenters here. So we got Junu. Junu is a partner solution architect based in Korea, and he's basically my colleague as well as Dean. So Juno is in ISV team, and Dean is in the data center optimization team in Asia as well, global partner solution. So it seems we don't have any questions, so I thought I'm just going to throw in quick question to both Juno and Dean. So what you guys think? What are the main sort of security issues that you commonly encounter across your engagements, your partners, that seem to be kind of common or prevalent across the board? What do you think? Do you want to share a little bit on that?
For me, based on my experience, it's not setting up the MFA, the multi-factor authentication. Your customer data is a big target, but your infrastructure is a big target as well. Lots of people are interested in mining crypto within your own infrastructure. So make sure that you protect your data, your infrastructure, and your customers' data.
Brilliant. It's quite, as you said, I think Dean as well is quite common credential is the one weak links, if you will, across sort of partners that you're seeing. Dean, do you want to add to that?
Just checking this headset working.
Yep, it's working fine.
You hear me okay? Great. Yeah, look, I think absolutely, like credential management is the absolute #1 thing. Depending on how you run your solution, obviously that's going to vary as to whether or not that's like a user MFA, or whether or not it's people within your organization. You've got to have a holistic point of view. Again, depending on the type of solution you have, how do you even authenticate your customers' credentials, right? So if you are completely looking after the credential, the access control management for your customers within your solution, then you're sort of adding extra layers of responsibility to yourself. And so being very thoughtful about that. And of course, I said just now during the call, the data side of things, being quite vigilant with the responsibility you have to other people's data. Even if that data is very centric to your solution, it's still potentially behavioral or customer data, and thinking about how what the risk profile represents as far as what I suppose the example I often use is, for every scenario, think about what the headline would look like on the front page of the most sensational newspaper or website where someone was trying to make you look bad. And so think about what you're doing in this very moment. So if they say Z organization allowed someone from this country on the other side of the world to sign in and access all these people's personal information, how does that motivate you to do things a different way or think about things in a different way? It's quite amazing how often the credential management is clear text passwords within your database. It's really, really common, and it's a well-known, easy thing to overcome, to fix.
Identity, isn't it? Yeah, identity is such a big thing. We do actually have a lot of, I guess, good guidance on that as well. If you go to aka.ms Zero Trust, so paste it in the link in the chat as well. We plan to upload this as well on YouTube, so probably we're going to include the this links as well in the show notes. So keep an eye on that. And we do also have some sessions planned, hopefully earlier in the year, next year, around identity and multi-tenancy. So hopefully that will be a good session for ISVs. All right, that's all. I think we can wrap it up. If there's any questions or anything, please feel free to contact us. So go through your account representative, obviously, as your first point of contact. But at the same time, you've got our sort of names as well as our LinkedIn. So feel free to contact us directly on that. So appreciate your time. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Juno, and thank you everyone else who's working in the background, Whitney and Mitch as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much, all. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.